So my first ever project in ceramics was all the way back in first grade when I made this coil snail in art class. I don't know about the education system in other states in the US, especially out of the country too, but we got to do usually one pottery project a year in first through eighth grade. The art teachers would obviously choose what we were doing, but it would switch each year. I thought this was a great first start to ceramics by learning how to roll coils. And then after elementary and middle school, I took one more ceramics class. It was in my freshman year, so my ninth grade year, and it was just ceramics one, which was hand building. And I think this was one of the projects I made there, or I know this was one of the projects. It was a pinch pot metamorphosis project. I really enjoyed ceramics a lot at this point in high school. I just was taking a lot of electives, so this was the last time I was unfortunately able to take a ceramics class until 5 years later, when I ended up transferring to Mankato State University after getting my associate's degree in community college, and I switched from getting my degree in physical and health education to then switching to be art education, so I was going to be an art teacher instead. So a big career change, but it was definitely necessary for me. So when I started at Mankato State University, I began in the wheel throwing class. I had a professor named Mika who was one of the most knowledgeable and impressive professors I've ever had in my life. I learned so much from her and so glad I started in her class. During that time, she had certain prompts we were supposed to follow. We were making cylinders, we were making mugs, and we were also making bowls. At the end, I think we were required to have around like 20 items throughout the whole semester, and I was in the studio so often because it was open 24/7, so I had almost around 100 items. I learned a lot about my style. At the beginning, I was creating a lot of like standard looking, straight edged pieces, but then I soon found out that I really like looks that have like almost like a wobble in them, or have like a little bit of an odd shape to them. It's just more in tune to my style. So it was a good start to figure out where I want to push my ceramic direction, and I'm so glad that I started with that class and so glad that I have Mika as my teacher as well. The next semester after my wheel throwing class, I started a hand building class. I did this with a different teacher. We had two ceramic teachers at our university, so I did this one with my ceramic teacher named Todd. I quickly realized how different their teaching styles were, but in that way, I really enjoyed the classes for what they were. I think I learned the same amount of information from both teachers, but just such a different style of information. And in getting such varying teaching techniques, it really helped me grow as an artist very quickly, and it helped me try to figure out my own style faster. So during this hand building class, we still had prompts to follow from this teacher. We did about 3 or 4 projects. I don't have any in the house at the moment, so I'll insert some pictures to show you what I created. During this time, I quickly realized how fast my skills were developing, and I was starting to create much larger pieces, but during this time frame I was also quickly realizing that I was having a disconnect with my artwork because it didn't really feel like my own. I found out that I just was kind of sick of prompts at this point. I was 22 at that point, and for around the first 18 years of my life, I had just been following prompts in art classes of like, do this, then do this, then do this, and make sure there's this. And it wasn't until the next semester when I finally got to do an open studio class. So once my hand building class ended, I then had 2 days off before I started a summer session. I did an independent study at this point, and I was fortunate enough where I had the whole entire pottery studio to myself for the first 2 months of the summer. It was probably one of the most developmental time in my artist career, and I feel like at that point, since I had the whole studio to myself, I really was just trying anything. I mainly started in making plant pots, and then I started building a few tables at that point, but I was also in a sculpture class too during the same time. So I wasn't trying to get too heavily involved in big ceramic projects that I didn't have enough time to finish before they would dry out. So I just tried a couple different variations before I then started the fall semester finally starting into my senior year of college where I really started developing things a lot better. It was during this time that I started creating my own little sculptures, which I still don't really have names for. I just call them shelves for now. But I started kind of figuring out that I wanted to push the boundaries of ceramics a little bit more, and I wanted to start creating ceramic furniture in a way. So I was creating those tables, I was creating shelves, I was also kind of I also created a vinyl record holder too, which was really cool and I still use up in my room right now. This was just a time that I was creating a lot of artwork. I was producing probably like 50 different sculptures in a semester, which to me was a lot to be working on. I tend to work on a lot of different things at once, that way I can rotate around to different projects while others are drying or others are still being built. But this was a really crucial time and my professors were giving me a lot of good feedback. They were really interested in what I was making, so that made me happier with what I was doing too. Knowing that other people are supportive of your projects is like a really crucial thing, I think, in art sometimes. I think it's most important to love your own artwork, but when you are getting the satisfactory of other people saying they're enjoying your stuff, that helps a lot when you're creating, so you feel less stress by the outside world, if that makes any sense. As I was entering my final semester in college, I was getting my degree in art education, which was meaning I was trying to be an art teacher. So I was doing student teaching. During that time, they tell you not to take any other classes or have a job. And while I didn't have a job, I did add a ceramics class because I knew without it, my mental health would plummet. So I kept doing ceramics, but unfortunately one day before the semester started, I got a text from my professor saying that I would have to leave my small cubicle space that they had let me have for the previous, I think, like 8 months. And while I understood, because most of the times they said if someone was student teaching, they wouldn't be using their studio space. They always said they would come in, but then they never did. And so I didn't really want to argue, I just said okay, went in the next day, moved my stuff. And then during that time frame, I ended actually making about the same amount of stuff as all my previous semesters, which my professors did later apologize to me for kicking me out of that studio space. But at the same time, I totally understood why they did it. I would usually teach from 7 to 3:30 every single day, and then I would drive back home, work in the studio for about a couple hours every day, and then just keep repeating that every single week. I had a really good time just spending my last few months in the studio space. And it was a really good relaxer after a day of teaching a bunch of kids. I have this video about a month before I graduate where I took all my bisqueware items and put them on a table. I'll show the video because I can't believe how much I was producing during that time frame in my life. I spent my final month creating last minute items before I graduated. And then when I graduated, I packed up all of my stuff from all 12 of my shelves, put them into my car, and then took them all home. And now I'm trying to figure out what to do with all of them. And now we're cut up all the way back to the present. And since graduating from college, it's been about 6-8 months now. Yeah, wow, it's been a while. And during that time frame, I've been creating a lot of smaller items, a lot of pinch pots I've been getting back into. And then I quickly realized, I don't really think I enjoy doing this. So I got back into doing my bigger sculptures that I was doing towards the end of my years at Mankato State. So now I'm back into making side tables again. I'm back into making plant pots, and also just trying to keep pushing boundaries with ceramics, trying new things. And I have a few projects going on right now that I've been filming, so in the coming weeks you should be seeing more from me. And I appreciate it if you watched this video this long, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.